You know, friends, we are so thankful that today is our first day back at the Kingdom Hall after the pandemic. And we're thankful for the slave in providing us with this special talk. This talk deals with it's time to return to Jehovah. You see, many people, many witnesses over the years have slacked off, but now is time because we are living deep in the last days. It is no time to be playing around at this time in history. In fact, we are so deep in the last days. A member of the governing body, one of the brothers of Christ, he put it best when he said the following:
We're living in the final part of the last days, undoubtedly the final part of the final part of the last days, shortly before the last day of the last days.
Yes, brothers, you could say we're literally down to the toenails. No longer the toes, but down to the toenails. So now is the time for each one to decide, what am I going to do? Because we are living deep, deep in the last days.
Hello? Hold a second. JT, telephone.
Hello? Hey, Bob, how you doing? Good to hear from you. Yeah, I saw you at the Kingdom Hall today. I was trying to get back to touch base with you after the meeting. But I'm glad you enjoyed the talk. This was food that we needed. You know, it's been a long time since we've seen you. Yeah. Well, you know, we're living so deep in the last days, and what we see going on over in Russia, this just lets us know that time is short. Yeah. Well, yeah, we would love to stop by. In fact, this is what I like to do. I want to set up something with Tim. Remember Tim? Yeah, you and Tim, y'all used to run together. Tim is one of our new elders now. Yeah, 23. So it'll be good to see you get together and go over some things and see if we can help you get back into a good routine. Because right now, there's no time to be playing around because we're living deep in the last days.
You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
You know, what you just saw in this little skit is actually something that's going to be taking place all around the world. Every single time some type of world event, and in this case, we see the case with Russia and Ukraine, the Jehovah's Witnesses, they get excited. And one of the most interesting emotions kicks in for so many witnesses, and that's fear. Fear that the world is going to end. And the comments that will be given, the talks that will be given, even the articles that we will see continue to come out in full force, they will use this fear to drive people back to the Kingdom Hall. And yes, people will be going. People will be calling. We've had contact with people. You think this is it, JT? And we think back to every single time some event in world history, some event around the world takes place, the Watchtower uses that as a very effective tool of fear. And it does work, sad to say.
And 48 years ago, elders stood on platforms all over the world at the service meeting, parroting these words from the May 1974 Kingdom Ministry, right before Watchtower's 1975 End of the World Proclamation.
So friends, the question that the article asks is, how are you living your life? Now, where have you heard that before? And everybody knows when the Watchtower asks that question, it's a setup. Are you no longer living your life for your own personal ambitions and desires, but living your life to do God's will? Ambition and to do God's will. Those two words, you need to know the definition of them, according to Watchtower. You see, when the Watchtower asks Jehovah's Witnesses about not living for your own ambitions, what does that really mean? And the doing of God's will? Well, we know what that is. But today, many witnesses are realizing that they could have gone to college and got 3 or 4 degrees, since the days of the Watchtower first talking about the end is near. And for many people, they are waking up, and this is what they're saying.
But your lies ain't working now.
The branch lets us know that there are reports coming in of brothers and sisters who are literally selling their homes so they can enjoy pioneering for the conclusion of this system of things. As the governing body says, this is certainly a fine way to spend the remaining time as this world draws to its end. Don't you just love those reports? You see, the purpose of those reports is to get other Jehovah's Witnesses to do the same thing. In this case, people were selling their houses, their property, their real estate. They commended Jehovah's Witnesses. Once again, this is what you should be doing. Remember the question, how are you living your life? We're going to show you how you should be living your life. And that's what those reports are designed for, to get other witnesses to do the same thing. But today, as people wake up, this is the message that they're throwing back into the Watchtower's face.
But your lies ain't working now.
Today, we hear of families who were impacted by those decisions to sell property. Why? Because the end was so close. And that's the reason why each one of us, we have to consider our circumstances. Some may have poor health. Some may not be in the financial position that they want to be. But yet, there are those who do have poor health. And there are those who do not have the best of financial circumstances. And the question is, what about you? Now, as they say, until morale improves, the beatings will continue. How many talks have we heard just like that, where they use that technique called guilt tripping? You see, they acknowledge, yes, there are people who have bad health. There are people who may be financially struggling. But there are those who are still doing it. And what about you? But for many, they will not be going back to the Kingdom Hall. Instead, for those individuals who are woke, they will be sending this message back to the Watchtower.
But your lies ain't working now.
So as the paragraph says, we have to ask the question, am I looking at my circumstances to see, can I regular pioneer? There you have it. There you have it. You see, it started out asking the question, what are you doing with your life? And it had nothing to do with being a good Christian, being a good husband, wife, children, putting on the fruits of the Spirit. None of those things. It had to do with, are you a regular pioneer? That's what the Watchtower means when they say, what are you doing with your life? And we have heard this over and over and over. And why? Because we're living so deep in the last days. It has been stated so many times. And after a while, you realize they literally have no idea what they're talking about. And once again, people are waking up, and what are they saying?
But your lies ain't working now.
So what the Watchtower does, they take issues like we see with Russia and Ukraine, world events, which is really going to be a march in the history of humanity. A few years down the road, we'll be talking about this like we did 9/11, just like we did World War II. But yet the Watchtower has effectively used these things literally to scare people and to get people back into the routine again. And it's very sad because what we're looking at is how you can use fear to cause people to make decisions that will impact them for the rest of their lives. The famous scientist Carl Sagan made a very interesting comment about Jehovah's Witnesses, and especially their leadership. And he gave the example of how the Watchtower taught that the world would end in 1914 with all religions, all governments, everything being destroyed. And when 1914 rolled around, and when nothing happened, they just simply came back and said, yeah, it did. It was just invisible. And if you didn't see it, too bad. Carl Sagan made the point that the Watchtower leaders literally had contempt for the intelligence of their followers.
And yes, we hope that individuals that, find our podcast will take the time to examine what they've been taught at the Kingdom Hall and to make better decisions going forward. This has been Lady C.
And this has been JT.
And we'll see you on the next episode.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.